Okay, standing by.
Stand by, Mayor.
In 5, 4.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene City Council Successor Agency to the Westminster Redevelopment Agency meeting right now, 7:14 p.m. Wednesday, February 10, 2021. Roll call.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Ta,
Here.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Vice Mayor.
I think he's muted. He's muted, but he's here.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Doe,
Here.
Councilmember Ho,
Here.
and Councilmember Manzo.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Salute to the flag will be Councilmember Manzo, and invocation will be Councilmember Ho. Please stand.
Yeah, please join me in salute to our nation's flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing and bow your head. We pray tonight to whatever source we turn to for strength. We pray that as leaders of our community, we might have the insight and courage to serve the citizens of Westminster with wisdom and truth. We ask for your guidance in making decisions that affect our community, ensuring that decisions made this evening are in the best interests of our city and its citizens. Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Manzo and Councilmember Ho. Next, we have report from City Attorney, please.
There's no report this evening.
Ex parte communication, we don't have any. And report from City Clerk.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Just like to announce that the city recently updated the city's website. It was launched last Tuesday. So if anyone has any concerns in the public or you have any technical issues accessing the website, feel free to call the City Clerk's office, 714-548-3237. In addition, we have Emergency Operations Coordinator Robert Acosta, who will be providing a COVID update.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Ta, Council, and staff. As you just heard, I've been asked to provide an update on the COVID response and Operation Independence. Start off with COVID. So nationally, in the state of California, as well as Orange County, all measurables continue to steadily drop. The healthcare agency just today attributed that drop to the vaccination effort locally and across the nation. With that being said, Orange County does remain solidly in the purple tier. That's the most restrictive tier. However, if trend lines continue, we could be looking at movement into the red tier within a few weeks. The wild card in all that is the response to the Super Bowl that just happened. So if we keep seeing the trend lines, we should be good, provided there's no bump there. Internally, the city continues to see a steep downturn in cases. We went another week with no new cases in the city. And we've had 0 cases of confirmed workplace transmission. Moving on to Operation Independence, that's the vaccine effort. Orange County, that effort continues to gain efficiency. The biggest challenge does continue to be vaccine availability and staffing. The city of Westminster is doing its part, as most cities are, by providing employees for the super pods to support the vaccination effort. Currently, there are 2 active super pods in Orange County. There's one at Disneyland, and there's one at Soka University in South Orange County. There's another pod slated for operation, which will be known as the Santa Ana College pod, and that'll be opening in the near future. Community members wishing to volunteer for these sites should do so at oneoc.com. That's ONEOC.com, where you can register to work the pods. And that can, like I said, the vaccines themselves and the staffing, that continues to be the biggest challenge for them. As far as getting a vaccine, Athena is still the best way for residents to virtually get in line for their vaccine. I am happy to report that since the last time we met, the Athena is now available in English, Spanish, and in Vietnamese. So that was a big push by the healthcare agency to get started. To date, over 600,000 county residents have registered in Athena, and over 160,000 have been vaccinated. The city of Westminster is still planning for mobile pods. These mobile pods are designed to serve senior citizens that live in the city of Westminster. The mobile pod program is managed by the healthcare agency and the incident management team. The city has no control over when and where those pods occur. However, we are ready. We have the, as soon as we get the green light, we have the site already earmarked. We have over 400 residents signed up, and we will be able to get it mobilized in very short order. And we could probably get it running in 1 or 2 days. As far as testing goes, Orange County continues to have a robust testing system, especially when you compare it to other counties. The city of Westminster is doing our part. We have a testing clinic that's available at City Hall, where people can be tested Monday, Wednesdays, or Saturdays from 9 to 3. The healthcare agency is requesting signups where you can do it on their website. Just keep in mind that the COVID guidelines and vaccine response are very dynamic. It just changes almost daily. Just today, for example, the CDC issued new guidelines in reference to quarantining or lack of quarantining necessary by those people that have been vaccinated. So these changes are occurring rapidly. We expect, speaking to the healthcare agency today, we expect them to adopt those changes within the next day or two. The healthcare agency and Operation Independence are providing us updates via conference calls three times a week. The team is working very hard to deliver the most accurate information as it becomes available. But like I said earlier, it's very dynamic, and what I report today might be different tomorrow morning. So, but we're doing our best. So that's end of report.
I really appreciate with your presentation, and I think I'm really happy with the news that Athena, now they have the Spanish and Vietnamese version. I think that's really helpful for our community. So I hope in the future that the county of Orange, they will give our city a mobile park. I think that's a really need for our seniors. Yes. So do we have any other question or concerns from other council member? Council member Doe, yes.
I have a question. Okay, you're talking about a CDC new guideline, lack of quarantine or something. Could you elaborate a little bit more? I was not aware of that.
So CDC just issued a new guideline that says if you've been fully vaccinated, that it's no longer necessary to quarantine if you've been exposed. That's going to obviously have some workplace impacts for us. So it'll be very good. But the way it works is the CDC guideline. They send out the guideline, and it's up to the state to adopt it, and then the county follows it. So that just came out today. The state hasn't adopted it yet, but in our conference call today, the healthcare agency feels that the state will adopt it, and they're going to follow right away. So that'll bode well for our workforce and not having to have people quarantine because they've been exposed.
Councilmember Doe, you've been unmute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Wow. So if you first responder, we vaccinated twice, and we can contract the COVID, tested positive for COVID, we don't have to quarantine. Is that what you're saying? Is that what he's saying? I'm sorry. Does that make sense? Or?
If you test positive for COVID, you're going to need to quarantine. You're going to need to isolate, actually. So quarantine is for those that aren't protected and have been exposed.
The issue is exposure. Have you been exposed?
Correct.
Oh, thank you. And one quick question about the Westminster mobile pod. Okay, you said that 400 people have signed up. How do they sign up? Through Athena, or is that a particular we can register?
They can reach out directly to the city, and because those mobile pods are designed for just that particular city's residents. So the Diana Shop's has a list of senior citizens in the community that they're already delivering food to, and they know are at-risk people that we've been checking, and individuals have been reaching out to them. But it's important to note or emphasize that we don't have one on the calendar yet. We're ready to go. We've been told to be ready, and as soon as we get the green light from the incident management team as well as the healthcare agency, we can do it. But it's really out of our control.
Okay, so there's the resident. It's just reserved for the elderly who have limitation of transportation, or is it qualified for people to do that? Senior citizen or
65 and over.
65 and over. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other question from other member of the City Council? If not, so thank you for your presentation, Mr.
You're welcome.
Acosta. Really appreciate that. All right. Next, we have a special presentation, Proclamation for Lunar New Year. So this coming Friday is the first day of our Lunar New Year. So Proclamation, Lunar New Year, February 12, 2021. Whereas Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival, marked the first new moon of the lunar solar calendar, traditional to many East Asian countries and regulated by the cycle of the moon and the sun. And whereas Lunar New Year calendar celebration begin Lunar New Year Eve and end the 15th day of the first lunar month, also known the Lantern Festival. And whereas this year, Lunar New Year is February 12, 2021. And whereas Lunar New Year Spring Festival also marked the transition from one animal to the next on the zodiac, with February 12 signaling the start of the year of the ox. Whereas Little Saigon has a diverse community that includes the largest population of Vietnamese people outside Vietnam, and they celebrate the Lunar New Year as Tet. And whereas the City of Westminster and Little Saigon community generally celebrate with festivities, including gatherings, festival, and a world-renowned annual Tet parade. And whereas with the ongoing pandemic, City of Westminster encouraged only safe and physically distant celebration for the well-being of our community. And whereas the City of Westminster wishes good fortune, health, and happiness to all during the Lunar New Year celebration and to the next year. Now, therefore, I, Tree Cha, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of Vice Mayor Chi Charlie Nguyen and Council members Tai Do, Kimberly Ho, and Carlos Menzo, do hereby proclaim February 12, 2021 as the beginning of the Lunar New Year in the City of Westminster in celebration of the Year of the Ox, and encourage all residents to join in the celebration for prosperous and healthy New Year. So Happy New Year to everyone, and I want to thank our City Clerk for writing this beautiful proclamation. Thank you. So next we have oral communication.
Yes, thank you. So I did receive 2 e-comments, and then anyone who would like to speak during oral communications after my e-comments, just please raise your hand. So I'll start with the e-comments. First one received is from Saeed Shah, and it says, the ban on short-term rentals is not being enforced, causing a huge shortage of housing. Stop these illegal listings. I can get you a list or easy to get on the internet. This will open up places to stay at a low price. Other cities like Long Beach bought mid-class hotels at $200,000 per room. Long Beach Best Western on Atlantic was bought this month. Family kitchen in some rooms for family as well. Cheaper than cheaper than building new ones, much more expensive. Community will accept if presented correctly. And that's from Said. And then also a comment from Monica Sellis, which states Governor Newsom new budget has allocated billions for future homeless support for buying of rentals of these institutions. City of Westminster can get huge grants and rent a hotel for immediate needs for housing. Many cities are doing this, but must offer long-term contract examples for 15 years. So for $1 million a year, you can easily get 40 plus rooms that are fully functional and ready to use. Again, that's from Monica Sellis. That's all I have for e-comments. So at this time, if anyone would like to speak, raise your hand. Okay, first speaker is Jody Boyd.
Hi, could you let somebody else go ahead of me, please?
I
Christine?
don't have anyone else raising their hands that they want to just.
Oh, okay, if I'm the only speaker, that's fine. I'll go ahead and go. I just wanted to note that yesterday I did attend a seminar that was sponsored by the City of Garden Grove and also the Orange County United Way. And basically the seminar was presented by a group that's like a subgroup of the United Way, United to End Homelessness. And it was very informative. And it also spoke of, there are a lot of grants and funding available. They showed two examples. One of them that both had been rundown hotels, one in Newport Beach, the other in Costa Mesa, which was a very problematic hotel, and how they have completely been revamped and remodeled using government grants to provide permanent housing. And that goes with, I feel that we really have a lack of affordable studio and 1-bedroom apartments. I think it says a lot that I can't even find a regular apartment to rent in Westminster and have to continue living with a roommate. So I really hope that we can get the 2021 task force on homelessness jump started again. And I continue to educate myself and take every opportunity to learn these things. But we do have a lot of opportunities before us, and we need to put together a plan with many swim lanes, but we need to recognize that we can solve our housing issues. But we need to put together a plan and get the correct resources working on it along with a project manager. And let's add our additional housing units and let's end homelessness in Westminster. It can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speaker?
So apparently we have one more speaker, Terry Rains. Terry.
Good evening, Terry Rains, Westminster. Item 3.4 on the consent calendar is the receipt of the fiscal year 1920 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, aka the CAFR. I thought the city had retained a different auditing firm until I realized White Nelson Dill Evans LLP had joined Clifton Larson Allen LLP in November. Did this merger have anything to do with the delay in presenting the final CAFR? Typically it is presented in early December. The good news is it appears to be another clean audit for the city. Per the CAFRs available online, we have used the same audit firm for at least the past 6 years. I am asking again, how many years did the city contract for with this firm? And when is the current contract up? Governmental entities should undertake a full-scale competitive process for the selection of independent auditors at the end of the term of each audit contract, consistent with applicable legal requirements. The audit procurement process should be structured so that the principal factor in the selection of an independent auditor is the auditor's ability to perform a quality audit. Price should not be the sole criterion for the selection of an audit firm. Rather, a firm should have a demonstrated commitment to the local government audit practice. Our surrounding cities have all changed audit firms in the last 5 years, including Fountain Valley, who previously used the same firm that we have now. I asked staff when we could expect the comprehensive mid-year budget review since the 1920 CAFR audit is done and we are already over 7 months into the new fiscal year. The response was either at the February 24th or March 10th City Council meeting. I fully support item 5.1, appointing Christian Bettenhausen as our city attorney. Christian has already demonstrated his ability to take on this role in Westminster. I can be a real pain to deal with as a member of the community, but I have always found him to be responsive and thorough. Although a city attorney's job is to serve and advise the city council, not the public, quite often the city attorney's office has had to weigh in on matters I have brought before council or to city staff. I hope the entire city council will join me in congratulating Christian and welcome him as our new city attorney. Question, will there be someone else designated as city attorney going forward? Assistant city attorney going forward. Congratulations are also in order to Marwan Youssef for being appointed as Westminster's new city manager. Per the city attorney, there were 48 applications submitted, so it is quite impressive that Marwan landed the position. I have asked the city attorney for the closed session vote tally to appoint Marwan, pending a final background check and agreement of contract terms per Government Code 54957.1A5. This was a final action taken in a closed session. The approval of the employment contract in public session tonight is merely a formality. The great news is the Gang of Three did not appoint Tyler Dip, which was the rumor floating around in the Vietnamese community. If they had, there would have been a mass exodus of city staff and intense public outrage. If Dip did apply, he was likely the least qualified person that did. Nothing at all against Marwan, but why has council promoted department heads into this position so many times over the years instead of hiring seasoned city manager professionals from the outside? It can be difficult for those promoted from within to effectively manage those who have been their peers for years. As you know, the city needs to make some tough decisions and budget cuts going forward. Honestly, I had hoped the council would hire a seasoned city manager this time, someone with expert knowledge and experience in economic development to increase our revenue streams and revitalize the city, and someone who had successfully implemented innovative solutions to address issues such as homelessness. Marwan certainly has his plate full on day one. He has to hire a new police chief since Chief Louderback has accepted the chief position in Cyprus, a director of public works to replace himself, a permanent finance director since Sherry Johnson is retiring this week, and a permanent human resources director. COVID and the City Civic Center project will also keep Marwan very busy. I wish him the best of luck and offer my full support. Question, did the city receive a refund from Bob Hall and Associates for the Chute Thai debacle? Yesterday, the city announced an unexpected vacancy on the Traffic Commission. Mayor Ta's appointment, Nam Kwan Wen, is vacating his seat, which seems odd considering he was just reappointed 2 weeks ago. Mayor Ta, any comments on this? And finally, the DA's office confirmed today that the investigation into Kimberly Councilwoman Ho's fraudulent vote center is still ongoing. Now 100 days into it. They have all available resources working on the case, specifically those with expertise in election law. An official statement once the investigation has concluded is expected due to the local, state, and national interest and implications of this case. Never a dull moment in Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have any other speaker? City Clerk?
At this time, I have no additional speakers.
All right, so I close all the communication. Next, we have consent calendar. All matter listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and may be approved by a single motion, followed by a roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless member of the City Council or staff request that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action or discussion. So may I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Can I have the staff report in 3.4?
All right, so would you like to pull item 3.4, Councilman Doe?
Yes, please.
Okay, so Councilman Manzo, would you like to revise your
Like motion to approve, except item 3.4.
Thank you. So may I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. So we have a motion and second to approve the consent, but item 3.4.
Yes, I have a motion made by Councilmember Manzo, and I have seconded by Councilmember Doe to approve the consent calendar to
But item 3.4, yeah.
accept item 3.4 for separate
Correct.
consideration.
Yes.
Okay, so, so roll call vote. Councilmember Doe,
Yes.
Councilmember Ho,
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Yes.
and Mayor Ta.
Yes.
Okay, motion
So
carried. 5-0.
item, oh, thank you. So item 3.4, staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. This is our financial reports for the 1920 fiscal year. Included is the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which is the primary financial report for the city and all of its component units. The auditors have issued an unqualified opinion and that the financial statements are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Also included in this is the appropriations limit worksheet, which is the calculation of our GAN appropriations limit for 1920. There were no findings. The audit communication letter, which communicates certain audit findings and other matters to the council, and would note any serious failures of management policies or practices. There were no difficulties noted, and there were no findings. There's a report on internal controls over financial reporting and compliance with other matters based on an audit of financial statements. And there were no deficiencies in internal controls. And finally, the Air Quality Management Special Revenue Fund financial statement, which also had no findings. I would like to say that the general fund ended with a $4.2 million increase to fund balance. And we collected $12.8 million in transaction and use tax for last fiscal year.
Thank you for your presentation. So basically that we have more money in the reserve than the last fiscal year. Am I right?
That's true. Yes.
Really appreciate that. And I'm really happy to see that our city will receive more than 100,000 in AQMD fund this past year. I think that's a really good news for the city. Yeah. So I think overall doing all right. Vice Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yes, I appreciate for the report, for the report there. I have the same thought as Councilmember Doe. If it didn't call to pull the 3.4. Moving forward, I recommend that for there's something that we receive like 2 big pack of reminder like this. I hope that you can come up with 1 or 2 page summarize if possible. The main point so that we can get the idea. Going through all these pages, I'm seriously tell you that I can't go through each and every page. So if next time you can develop like 3 or 4 page of a presentation, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Councilmember Doe?
With that, I'll go ahead and move to approve 3.4.
Okay, so
Let me have a question real quick.
okay.
So this is an annual audit report, is that correct? We do it
That's correct. Every
okay.
year, yes.
And do we go with the same audit company firm, accounting
No,
firm?
we don't always know. And in fact, we have a new partner on this audit.
Well, what does
So
that mean?
It means it's the person that oversees the audit is new to the city or to our audit. They haven't done our audit in the past. So it's different people doing it. It's the same firm under a new name, but it's different people.
Okay, so let me understand something. Is this different person from the same firm as a new company?
Well, yes, it was White Nelson, and then they merged with Clifton Larson. But the partner on it is a different person. Yes.
Okay. Is there a process to get a bid for audit, or how do we get this company to sign a contract to do auditing for our city?
We would issue an RFP.
Okay.
And request proposals.
Every single year?
No. So we have had this auditor, and I don't know honestly how many years, and I can check and get you that information. but we can issue a request for proposals if that's the council's direction.
Okay, so I just want to know, so you don't have the information, how many years have we been with this auditing company?
No, I don't have that right in front of me. No.
5 years? 2 years? No idea.
No, I'm sorry. No, I don't know.
Yeah, could you, how do we gonna get the information? Next council meeting by email? But I'd like to have it presented in public forum. Is
Okay,
that kind of can we update it on the next meeting?
sure.
We have an update?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So we have a motion from Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Second it?
Okay, so we have a second from Councilmember Doe. Roll call vote.
Yes, so that was a motion made by Vice Mayor Nguyen, seconded by Councilmember Doe, and that's to accept the financial reports for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2020. Councilmember Doe,
Yes.
Councilmember Ho,
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Yes.
and Mayor Ta.
Yes,
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Next, we have public hearings.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, changes have been made to the public hearing process in order to ensure members of the public may participate remotely. Members of the public who wish to address the City Council were asked to submit comments in writing up to 24 hours prior to the meeting. In lieu of written comments, members of the public who wish to verbally address the City Council tonight may do so by speaking on via Zoom. There were instructions provided in the agenda for those wishing to participate, and we did receive comments for that.
All right, so item 4.1, fiscal year 21/22 annual action plan, housing and community development need and priorities. So may I have a staff report?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Our housing specialist, Michael Sun, will be delivering the staff report tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michael Sun. I'm the housing specialist in the Community Development Department. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide an opportunity for the public and council members to provide their input on the use of CDBG and home funds as we prepare our annual action plan. It's our plan that we prepare every single year. So any comments received tonight will be included into the plan, and a draft of the plan will be available at the next council meeting for council's recommendations on March 24th. And I'm available for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So any question from a member of the City Council before I open up public hearing? Any question or concerns?
I do have a concern.
Please.
And I spoke about this before, but I can't seem to let it. I spoke to staff about it, but it keeps bothering me. Are we able to? I see that there's an allocation for code enforcement using some CDBG funds. Can we have the funding for that code enforcement come from? I kind of want from the police department allocation fund, because I mean, if we get very little CDBG money to begin with, then I would like to see that money go more directly to divisions we have. But if we're able to pull those funds from the police fund, for instance, I think it's better served that we have more funds go directly to our community members. Can we do that?
That comment is what tonight is for, is to gather your input and your direction that you'd like to take. We can certainly work with the city manager and the police department to look at options on that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Manzo. Any other question or concerns from member of the City Council before I open this item to the public? Okay, so if not, open public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So apparently, and I'd like to just reflect this in the record, the two public comments that I read earlier, the one from Saeed Shah and the one from Monica Sellis, were both for this particular public hearing, and they were both in regards to homeless support and the needs to allocate for for homelessness. And yeah, so I just wanted to strike that from the record for oral communications and push those comments as part of the record for public hearing. That being said, I also have an additional comment from Irene Martinez for Meals on Wheels, and it states, "Hello, my name is Irene Martinez, and I'm speaking on behalf of Meals on Wheels Orange County. Meals on Wheels Orange County would like to thank you all for your continued support of our home delivered meals program over the years. In the wake of these dynamic times, we have adapted our programs to continue serving the senior population. We have modified our Lunch Cafe congregate meal program to grab and go frozen meals that can be picked up at the sites by seniors or their loved ones. We have also ramped up our Meals on Wheels home delivered program, all while following social distancing and safety guidelines. Through the incredible dedication and tireless work of our staff, combined with the unparalleled support and commitment of our city and nonprofit partners and the county, we have increased serving levels. We are currently serving 72 seniors a day with our home delivered meals program in the city of Westminster. During the last fiscal year 1920, we served a total of 42,076 meals to 102 clients in the city of Westminster. Participants of the program receive 3 meals a day, 5 days a week by volunteer drivers. The meals are nutritionally balanced by a registered dietitian and based on a suggested voluntary contribution of $5.25 per day. Most of our participants are low income, homebound, isolated, have difficulty shopping or preparing their meals, and are the most at risk demographic of COVID-19. These are a few of the many reasons why it is important to continue providing the much needed support to those most vulnerable in our community. Together with our volunteers, supporters, and partners, we make Meals on Wheels Orange County an essential force, providing our older neighbors with life-sustaining nourishment, care, and resources. On behalf of the board and management team, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We look forward to continuing our partnership and providing much needed support to the community in the years to come." Again, that's from Irene Martinez on behalf of Meals on Wheels Orange County. At this time, I do not have any additional e-comments, but I do have speakers who would like to verbally address the council. So first speaker I have is Terry Rains. Terry.
Good evening, Terry Rains, Westminster. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input regarding the housing and community development needs and priorities for the 21-22 annual action plan. Looking at the CDBG funding request attachment, it appears funding requests have already far outweighed the available funds for the upcoming year. But something that caught my eye is the amount of carryover funds there are. I can't imagine why the city would not use every single dollar of available funding from the CDBG and home programs each and every year. For example, in the fiscal year 1920 amended plan, $95,000 of the CARES Act CDBG-CV funds were allocated to the rapid rehousing program for those experiencing homelessness. Sadly, most of that money was not used. Perhaps the city should take a hard look at the administration and restrictions of that particular program to determine if adjustments are warranted to make it more successful. Our homelessness issue certainly hasn't gone away or even improved, so the need is definitely there. It would be helpful if staff would provide a breakdown of the funds carried over year to year for these two programs. The fiscal year 2021 annual plan includes $780,594 CDBG funds carried over from the fiscal year 1920 plan, and the fiscal year 21-22 plan anticipates $309,531 CDBG funds being carried over from the fiscal year 2021 annual plan. I say anticipates because the fiscal year 2021 year is not over until June of this year. Perhaps an in-depth analysis of unused funds every year would help the city better prioritize funding allocations going forward. At the same time, staff could determine why the funds of a particular allocation were not used and make adjustments if and when necessary. I do not see a funding request attachment for the federal home funds. Perhaps these funds are allocated by city staff as specific needs arise versus funding requests. I'm curious if there are also carryover home funds from prior years as there are with CDBG funds. Perhaps staff could address this and also let us know where they anticipate they expect to spend the $400,000 in 21-22 home funds. As far as the CDBG requests received for the 21-22 annual plan, I have a few suggestions. I noted a significant increase in the request for street improvement funding. While it is important to maintain our streets, there are several other funding sources for street improvements, such as Measure M, local turnback, gas tax general, gas tax SB1, and Measure SS funds while they last. So for these two programs, I think we should prioritize housing and community resource needs over street improvements. I am not sure how the senior outreach funds are currently being used, but I would like to see if funding permits some sort of senior companionship program in our community. During the 3 elections that took place during this pandemic, I made thousands of calls and spoke to hundreds of seniors in our community. The overwhelming sense I got from those conversations was their profound loneliness and sadness and how much they missed in-person human contact. I am talking about the most vulnerable and frail seniors, many of whom are homebound and were long before the pandemic. I know our community services team has been great at reaching out to seniors by phone based on those registered in their database. But I would like to see us expand on that to in-person companionship visits and reaching out to those not already in the database, not just to deliver meals or food staples, but to provide them the much needed human companionship that is so often overlooked. I have no objection to the balance of the request. I would like to see more money used compassionately to assist our residents who are experiencing homelessness, but only after a full review of our current outreach efforts and programs has been done, which I'm sure the Homelessness Task Force will be looking into going forward. I have a wish list a mile long, but CDBG and home funds only go so far. I look forward to monitoring and participating in the fiscal year 21-22 annual action plan more in the future. Thank you.
Do we have any other speaker?
Yes,
City
we
Clerk?
do. We do. Next speaker, or last speaker, unless anybody else would like to speak, is Jody Boyd. Jody.
Good evening again, everybody. I've carefully been listening to all of the speakers regarding this item and earlier, and everybody that's speaking is hitting upon a general theme, and that is to allocate and reallocate funds and to find additional funds to go to the people, the actual people in our community, especially the elderly, and for housing for our lowest income people. You know, we had a big focus during the last months of 2020 of the COVID-related impact on our business community. And the rush was on to prop up our businesses, to help our businesses. But to best of my knowledge, we've never gotten any statistics or feedback back on how successful were we in doing that. And, you know, how many businesses went out of business anyway. I think that we need to reset the play for 2021 and really focus on the people and housing and meals. And that's one theme that you're going to hear me hit on over and over again. We need affordable housing, and we need to continue to support our seniors, and that will include Meals on Wheels. And I do put my money where my mouth is, and I've made a sizable food contribution for the food drive that will take place later this week. So this is near and dear to me. Thank you.
City Clerk, any other speaker?
I have, at this time, no additional speakers.
All right, so then I close public hearing, and I have a question. I have a few questions for staff. Can any staff explain to me what did we do with the senior outreach program and the neighborhood right home we have? Can you explain to the council and also to the public?
So the Neighborhood Pride Home Rehab Program, this was the first year that we conducted it in this manner. It was targeted towards multifamily residential. We did not have any takers on the money this year. I don't know how much of that is just it being a very challenging year and not a time when someone owning an apartment development wants to embark on improvements. The money is, essentially limited. $250,000 can get you something, but it may not get you everything you want. And it is a very invasive process. And I know many members of this council have heard this when we utilized a different rehab program for single family residential, how common it was for property owners to apply and then drop out once they found how difficult the process is. You do have to disclose a lot of personal information. It is a federal program and these are their requirements. So I truthfully, I can't tell you why it works or didn't work, but this was the first time we tried it. And because it was an unusual year, we felt like it was worth trying again. That's why staff would like you to consider looking at it again for this next year as we come out of the lockdown and hopefully move forward with, some rehab programs. And with regards to how the senior outreach program, Diana, if you can chime in and give a little bit more background on that, that would be helpful. Or not. So for community development purposes, what we do is we take in these applications. The applicants are provided the funding through a reimbursement program. There's a monthly process where we write them a check. My understanding is that the Meals on Wheels is the home delivery and the senior outreach program is slightly different. But to tell you the truth, I can't answer that exactly. I don't know if Michael or Diana could speak to that just a little bit different, since I know it operates through community services. We might have to get back to you on that. I apologize.
Okay, so another question that for the fiscal year 2021, so we had the funding to improve the Sigler Park, and for the next coming year, fiscal year, we have the funding for Liberty Park. And what would we do with this park improvement?
I believe it's a pretty significant overhaul of the recreational equipment and the. Sorry, Diana.
I'm sorry, Lexa. I'm here. I was having technical issues. I couldn't get unmuted, so I apologize. Let me see if I can. So if you don't mind, I'll back up and talk about the senior outreach. That goes to fund salaries. It's basically funding salaries at the senior center who provide the outreach services to our seniors. So that's just our staffing to provide that outreach service. As it relates to the funding for the park renovation project, it's specifically for the playground. We did the parks master plan, and it was identified as one of the parks needing to be replaced as soon as possible. So we're following the master plan to ensure that we meet the needs through the parks master plan.
Yeah, I have a question about the park. I think you all remember, like, I don't remember exactly, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, the past city council, including myself, we approved like millions of dollars to improve, all the 22 park in our city. So
yes, that was really, $10 million. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't really upgrade everything in the park. So at a time, we did not really upgrade everything in the park.
Yeah. So a lot of the 10 million went to fund deferred maintenance. We had been underfunding the maintenance of our park. So we did a lot of playground irrigation. We did a lot of things that you could not visibly see. We approved ADA walkways, things that had been on the list, but did not have the funding. So that's what that $10 million went for. Trust me, there's no one more than myself that wanted everybody to be able to see what we could do with $10 million, but a lot of that went for deferred maintenance. So.
Thank you so much for your answer. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulty.
Yeah. All right. Any question from Councilmember Doe?
And like I said, you're talking about the neighborhood pride home rehab. You say that that program is extremely difficult for people to qualify because it's very intrusive. Is that correct?
Intrusive would be the correct word. Yeah.
Okay. And no taker. There's been no taker for the past year.
Not for this year, no. We have had takers in the past for the single family rehab program, and that did take a little time to catch on to, which
And
again,
how many family benefit from that $250,000?
it would, so this is targeting multifamily, so it would depend on the applicant, whether or
On the
not,
department.
yeah, if it's eight units, then 8 families would benefit. If it's, 4 units would benefit.
Okay, so the money continue to roll over for the following year. Is that correct? That's
Correct.
legal? So how much money we have in that right now?
So there was $250,000 allocated this
Gotcha.
last year. That would roll over into the year that we're planning for. Or it's allocated for this current year that we're in, that would roll over to the year we're planning for if it's not spent. Now it's only February. This goes through June, so it could be spent by that time. That's why the money is always a little bit of a moving target. We do this planning now for a year that starts in July, but there could still very well be a successful applicant between now and then.
Okay, thank you.
Alexa, excuse me, Mayor, can I ask a question?
Please.
Alexa, on that theme of the neighborhood pride, like I mentioned to some of the staff before, when you're on foot, you see a lot of things than you do driving around. I see a lot of multifamily apartment buildings that need some major work. Do we just wait for somebody to apply, or is it possible for us to identify some dilapidated buildings and reach out to the property owner and say, hey, here's a fund that you can use, and reach out to them instead of waiting for them to come to us? Is that something that we can do?
That's actually what we do. That's what the code enforcement component of the program is. So we have a dedicated code enforcement officer to a specific area where this is applicable, and they are going and working with the property owners. We've done notifications. We're not in a position where we can knock on doors, but she is in the neighborhood. She is letting she's letting potential applicants know that this funding is available. She's talking to those that are suffering the largest amount of deferred maintenance. If they do have code violations, she's trying to assist them getting through that process. So yeah, we are having those conversations. It's a dual program, if you will. There's 2 pieces to it.
Yeah, I've lived here for quite some time, and I see the same buildings with the same issues year after year after year, and it kind of makes me think, well, not to get on somebody's bad side, but the same issue is still the same, and code enforcement issue is still there. So it kind of makes me wonder if there is contact, and if there is. How much leeway do we give them, and how much time do we give them to either make the repairs or take advantage of these fundings? So I would like to see something more, kind of get out there and really push them to take advantage of these funds. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm kind of really curious. Last year, with all the lockdown, how did we spend the money in the summer youth program and Project Shoe? I'm kind of really curious.
Yes.
So last year, we had a lockdown, and how did we spend the money in Project Shoe and summer youth program?
Yeah, so the Project Shoe, we stopped that in March, so we have not spent the current year funding for Project Shoe. However, the summer youth program, we did grab and go activity bags, and then we offered the free lunch program at the Civic Center site. So we modified and just reinvented how the program was going to be offered. And we plan to do that again this summer, depending on what tier we get into by the time summer starts.
Excellent. I really appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Do we have any other questions or concerns from member of the City Council?
Yeah, just that one that I mentioned. I mean, if we can move some of those monies where it's direct impact to our residents, I think that'd be more beneficial. Wherever we can find those funds, just moving. I mean, I understand. I mean, code enforcement is a big deal, and it's very important. I mean, to me, that's our first line of defense on preventing blight. But I just like to see that money come from maybe the police department fund. I think we need a lot of these programs we have, like we mentioned, that go directly to Meals on Wheels, the shoe, senior. I think we need to allocate that money more towards direct impact to our residents, if that's possible.
Yeah, to respond to Councilmember Menzo's concerns, may I ask the Chief of Police if he's online right now? So I'm not sure whether or not he's online. I couldn't see him on my screen. So is he on? Our Chief of Police?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the connection tonight's the connection tonight for me is kind of spotty,
Okay.
so I wasn't clear on your whole question. If you could repeat your question.
Councilmember Menzo?
Yes, thank you, Chief Lauterbach. And the question is on the code enforcement for these needs for the community. Can, instead of the funding coming from the very little money that we get from CDBG and the home fund, can we fund that code enforcement through the police budget? That's my question.
We can take a look at the budget and see. Our budget's pretty tight as it is moving into this next year with all the restraints and everything through COVID. But there's always time to review the budget and see where we can move money around. And if we can come up with some savings that we've had throughout the year and looking into the future, of course, we can move some money around and direct that towards code enforcement to help out. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember
Thank you,
Monzo, if I
Chief.
could also just respond to your other comment before with regards to direction. If you're looking at the sheet, the attachment there with the funding requests, you'll notice items 1 through 5 are in a separate category, and they are for a max of 15%. So CDBG provides us rules under which we spend the funds. CDBG very much wants to be about kind of I'm going to use the term brick and mortar, but capital projects is where they like to see the money invested. So services are limited to 15% of our allocation. So we are not allowed to take money from street improvements and put it into senior meals, for example. However, we could take money from streets and put it into parks, or we could take money from parks and put it towards affordable housing. So you kind of have to think of them as two separate things. There's the services, which is under that 15% cap, and then everything else is something you would build, if you will.
Okay, well, maybe I can get the staff's help on coming up with a more imaginative way to put that money direct to residents in a more efficient manner. Hopefully, help with that.
So I'd like to follow up questions with the code enforcement. So how does the code enforcement build to this grant? Is that money going to a general fund from the PD, or it's just specifically for project that related to this particular grant?
Yeah, it's project specific. So we do have like I said, a dedicated officer. We're budgeted for an officer and a half that are assigned to a particular section in town that qualifies under the CDBG program as being an area of low income. So I believe they are simply paid out of the general fund when they get a paycheck, but they do submit paperwork to us on a monthly basis that is processed. And then, Aaron, you answer this better. You move the money.
Yes, they're paid out of CDBG. They're charged there directly. So all of their time is coded there, and that's where they're paid from.
Okay, so the money doesn't go to the general PD general.
No, it's in a special revenue fund specific to CDBG.
So we have one and a half code enforcement officer assigned to the particular.
That's correct.
Okay, so okay, thank you.
All right, is there any other questions or concerns from member of the City Council? If not, so may I have action? May I have some action from City Council? So I'd like to move as recommended.
So, okay, I have a question to that motion. If move as recommended, does that address the issue that Councilman Manzo brought up to police, or?
Yeah, do we need to make an amendment?
Tonight is just receive and file. Tonight is a time for input. This comes back to you twice more before you can actually approve.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
So may I have
I
second? Okay, so we have a motion and second to approve this item as recommended.
Yes, that's a motion made by Mayor Ta, seconded by Councilmember Doe. And it's to consider the city's housing and non-housing development needs for the preparation of the fiscal year 2021 to 2022 annual action plan, and receive and file this report and any comments made by the City Council and residents during the public hearing for inclusion in the final year annual action plan. Roll call vote. Councilmember Doe,
Yes.
Councilmember Ho,
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Yes.
and Mayor Ta.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Next, we have regular business, item 5.1, amendment number 3 to agreement with law office, with the law office of Johns and Mayer.
I move to approve.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Yes, that was a motion made by Vice Mayor Nguyen, seconded by, I believe was Mayor Ta. Okay, and that's to approve amendment number 3 to the agreement with the Office of Jones and Mayer for City Attorney Legal Services, appointing Christian L. Bettenhausen as City Attorney. A roll call vote. Councilmember Doe,
Yes.
Councilmember Ho,
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Yes.
and Mayor Ta.
Yes, item 5.2.
Oh, motion carries 5-0.
Item 5.2, appointment of city manager and approval of employment agreement.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, before you is the proposed contract with Marwan Yusuf to become the new city manager as required by law. This contract must be before the council in a publicly agendized meeting on a regular meeting agenda and must be moved and approved by the city council publicly. With respect to the process, we had a robust recruitment. We had over 40 people apply for this position throughout the country. The council interviewed 9 candidates, then interviewed or re-interviewed 3 candidates after that 9 candidates, and out of those 3 finalists made a decision. City Attorney Bettenhausen will provide you the terms of the contract. Christian?
Thank you, Council, and I'll keep this relatively brief. But let me just say that the terms of this agreement are based in large part upon the agreement that was already in existence for the prior city manager, Eddie Manfro. So I tried to keep as close as possible to that. Added to that, we have the fact that Mr. Yusuf is an existing department head. So a lot of the same benefits he already received, same vacation, same sick, all the other health benefits are already in existence. But again, this agreement is pretty much the same as existed previously. I'm just going to point out a couple things. One is that the term of the agreement is going to begin on this Friday, February 12th at 1 p.m. As a salary, he will receive an annual salary of $234,372 per year, and that is in accordance with what was advertised for the position. I'll also point out that under automobile allowance, the employee will be authorized to take his the vehicle that he's already assigned home. I do have on there the words on weekdays, and I would like to ask that you strike that just to make it clear that he's entitled to take the vehicle home without questions about time frame. I think that's confusing. So it just says strike the words on weekdays. There is a $60 cell phone allowance. And then beyond that, everything else is the same as would be received by other management, administrative, confidential employees of the city, which again, he already receives. So with that, the agreement is presented to you for consideration and approval.
Thank you so much for your report. Any questions or concerns from member of the City Council? So may I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, the motion made by Councilmember Menzel and second by Vice Mayor Nguyen.
Yes, and
Roll call vote.
just to clarify for the motion, that's to approve the agreement, but also stricken in the record for the car that it's taken out, we're taking out the word on weekdays.
Correct.
Correct.
So I believe the motion approved as recommended by our city attorney. Yeah, we.
Okay.
Very good.
So roll call vote. Councilmember Doe,
Yes.
Councilmember Ho,
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen,
Yes.
and Mayor Ta.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Next, we have item 6.1, urgency ordinance relating to temporary moratorium on commercial eviction.
Yes, and I believe I'll be giving the report on this. This is a follow-up to our discussion at the last council meeting, where we had a discussion about whether and what the council wanted to do with respect to commercial eviction protections. As we discussed previously, the council no longer has jurisdiction over residential evictions. That was something that was originally granted by the emergency order of the governor, but was later the legislature in September or late August passed legislation that took over the issue of residential eviction protections. And so those protections are currently in place until the end of June. But with respect to commercial evictions, that's still within the council's jurisdiction. Different cities are handling it differently. Ours city, the city council, when it was originally adopted back in March of last year, we tied it to the governor's order and the governor's order as amended. So that originally that order was only a couple months, but then he later extended it and extended it again. So currently the commercial protections are due to expire on March 31st of this year. At the last meeting, council gave direction to have me prepare an urgency ordinance that would extend those protections out till the end of this month, February 28th, but then they would terminate at that point. So that is what is before you tonight. I have an urgency ordinance that would accomplish that. And again, this is presented to you for your discussion and approval if it's agreeable.
Thank you so much for that. Any question or concerns?
I do. I have a question.
Councilmember Ho, yes.
Does anybody want to go first? Go ahead. I'll go later.
Anyone want to go before Councilmember Ho?
I just have to me is like I stated last week or the last meeting. I mean, I think we're trying to help our small businesses with the idea that Councilwoman Ho had as far as helping our struggling businesses. I just think that we should keep that theme going and, you know, help them as much as we can. So, so that's how I feel.
All right. Anyone else before Councilmember Ho speak? I don't see anyone, so Councilmember Ho.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, if a city attorney, would you mind reading to me the original moratorium, the commercial moratorium that we were speaking about? What was the original? Could you just read and let me know exactly what it said, what we agreed to, what we have currently? I guess what is the current Shall I say the current and the original that we agreed to?
Well, originally when this was adopted, which I'll get the date on that,
That
March.
never changed, correct? It was the original, never made any changes, correct?
Correct. It's been extended, but that's because it was tied to the governor's extensions, and the governor has subsequently extended it.
Okay.
And then, as I said, the legislature took away the residential protection. So as written, it includes residential, but that's not applicable.
Okay.
So basically, I mean, I could go through it, but to summarize it, a landlord shall not seek to evict a commercial tenant if both of the following is true. They show a decrease in income or increased medical expenses. And then two, they're tied to COVID. So they can show that somehow that decrease is a result of COVID. And then they're required to notify the landlord in writing before the day the rent's due. And if they provide that notice, then they're allowed 30 days afterwards to provide some kind of documentation in writing establishing those first two things that I mentioned, that they're suffering a loss and that it's a result of COVID. And then it does say also that on or before the day that the rent is due, the tenant must pay no less than the full amount of their rent, less the amount that they've been able to prove that is a result of COVID. So it does require some kind of partial payment. So that's the general rule, and it says landlords should not evict under those circumstances. There is some language that does talk about what happens. Nothing in the ordinance, this is in section G, nothing in the ordinance shall relieve the tenant of liability for any unpaid rent. So they'll still owe the rent. It goes on to say that the landlord may seek the unpaid rent after the expiration of the term. Whenever the term of this expires, which is what we're talking about, then the tenant must pay it as soon as possible, but in no event later than 120 days from the expiration of the term. So essentially 4 months. Those are the basic terms.
Okay. So I read this earlier. I wanted to have you read it to the rest of the council. And one of the things that the last part I have trouble with, and I think we might have extended this moratorium without going back to review what it said. So the part that I'm really particularly concerned about would be the no later than 4 months. So could you expand or make that a little clearer to everybody? So let's say if let's say a tenant owes, so now it's what, it's been a year, it's like 10 months since this was put in place, correct?
Correct, since March 27th.
So March 27th, so 11 months. So then if according to that ordinance that is in existence right now, and we just kind of followed the state and we extended and extended. So if tenants owe from March until now, that's 11 months worth of rent. So am I understanding correctly your interpretation that they have to pay 11 months worth of rent in 4 months, no later than 4 months, correct? After we lift this moratorium, correct?
Correct, that's what the ordinance says.
Okay. So let's say if somebody owes, so somebody's rent is $10,000 a month. Let's say, okay, maybe not 10,000. Not everybody pays 10,000, but let's say 5,000. So I know rent is really high in our town, and so let's just say 5,000 times 11 months, so that's about $55,000, correct? And so when we lift this moratorium, they are to pay the $55,000 in back rent over 4 months. What is that per month? So that's according to my math. Can anybody calculate that really quickly? So that's 55, divide that by 4 months. So that's like an extra 13,000, roughly $14,000 a month plus their current rent, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I have a problem with that. Number one is because that's just not possible. That's, to me, it's not reasonable. I don't know if anybody's capable of paying that amount of back pay within 4 months. So I think we might have overlooked, or maybe we extended without looking at our ordinance. What is being stated in our ordinance is the pay no later than 4 months. So that's number one problem I see. So if we were to lift this temporary moratorium for commercial evictions, I see that we will have a lot of vacancies because people are going to, the way it's written right now, what we are proposing right now, there will be a lot of vacancies. And it's really going to cause our city to look like we're in a recession. Okay, and what we're really trying to do and what we really intend to do is that we're trying to help our business community. So I believe that there's going to be some unintended consequences. And so we have to line up our, we're trying to work with people like the SBA, the SBDC, and with some of the things that we're doing, giving grants to our small businesses. So I know that that's what we want to do. I know that we're trying to help the landlord and all that. But if we do this, I'm just glad that we are reviewing everything at this time, because I believe that, there will be some unintended consequences that are a little bit scary to face if we think about it. And so we need to really work together with our business community. So I'm just telling you that I actually made a call to one of our biggest landlord, and I want to just let everybody know my business is in the city of Westminster. But I want to remind you that I'm a landlord. I'm not a tenant. Okay. So I'm not being self-serving. So I know that I'm trying to be very objective. And what it is if I since a couple of weeks has passed, and so I had even more time to look at it in a more thorough manner. And I find that so as I said, I reach out to one of our biggest landlords in town. And I believe that he's got roughly 200 tenants. So if we were to lift this moratorium the 28th of February, and then the way it's stated and what we agreed on previously at the last meeting, we would give people no time whatsoever to come up with the money to pay the back rent. So that means that the landlords are able to execute or just go back to normal business and do a 3-day pay or quit. And I'm very familiar with that process. And I think that at this time, it wouldn't, to me, I think a lot of people will leave. They will quit because it's just not reasonable to expect them to pay in 3 days or quit. So they are going to quit. I can bet on that. And so when I said that to the biggest landlord, he said, well, his intention is really to target this one tenant who has, a ton of money, but does not want to pay rent. And I think that for me, I'm not targeting anybody. I'm just thinking that, we got to think through, and we want to make sure we don't hurt the people. We don't want to hurt the wrong people. We don't want to hurt anybody, period. We want to be fair to tenants and landlords. So we're really trying to look every which way to try to come up with something that makes sense, that's reasonable, and that, and then also, I don't want to hurt our city. So like I said, if we have a bunch of vacancies and then we look like we're in a recession, who's going to want to open businesses in our town? I wouldn't. I'd be pretty scared. And then tenants who are trying to revive their businesses, they're like, okay, now I see a lot of vacancies. That's going to affect them psychologically, I'm sure. So I believe that, yes, the landlord is right. There are people who, I have to admit that there are people who take advantage of the system. They take advantage of the moratorium. I would say it's probably the 80-20 rule. So 20% of the people take advantage of the system, of the moratorium, and then 80% really, really suffer. So by passing this moratorium, by lifting this moratorium, I would say we are going to hurt the 80. We're not going to hurt the 20 because they have plenty of money. So I believe that we're not going to hurt the 20. So I do not want to hurt the business community, and I don't want to hurt the 80%. So I think that, I'm thinking that, landlord and tenants, and I have done the same. Back in June, this last June, I sat down with my tenants and I said, well, how much can you pay forward or monthly towards your back rent? So tenants and landlords need to sit down. And the only thing is that I can't expect every landlord to be reasonable, or, if we just leave it up to them. So, to sit down and work out something with their tenants. But if we leave it the way it is, they could actually take the tenant to court or post a 3-day pay or quit and get them out, and then take them to court and get them out. So I would like to see if our city attorney, Mr. Christian, could, come back with the verbiage of exactly how we're going to propose our tenants and landlords to work things out. That is number one. A couple of things to look at is, number one is to make sure we protect our city and not make us look like we have a ton of vacancies and we're in a recession. So number two is to be reasonable to the tenants who have to owe back pay. You see, if we never adopt it, I understand that some cities never ever, from the very beginning, from the get-go, they never adopted that moratorium for commercial evictions. They never did. But what happened is, it would have been better if we, in hindsight, if we chose not to adopt, then we don't have to worry about the back pay and 12 months of back pay. And what are we going to do to protect our tenants? Because there wouldn't be any back pay to speak of. But then all of a sudden we allowed that, and all these months, 10, 11 months has passed. So all these people have back pay. So they have back rent that they haven't paid. So we need to put something. I'm all for it. The only thing is, I'm asking to come back and make sure we get that verbiage to make sure that tenants and landlords sit down with their tenants, work out a deal, an agreement. And once those agreements are signed, then they should not be allowed to evict these tenants. So when I looked at these real numbers that people owe, so it doesn't take much to owe $50,000. So that's like $5,000 a month times 10. That's 10 months, 50,000. And like I did the math for you earlier, I think it's really unreasonable to ask. Right now, the way our ordinance is written, they have to pay that no later than 4 months. And that means it's $13,000 or $14,000. And that's only based on $5,000 a month rent. A lot of, higher rents are like $8,000, $10,000 a month. So if so, they would owe almost close to $100,000 and expected to pay back in 4 months. Correct, Christian? If I did my calculation correctly and I'm interpreting the ordinance correctly, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Bettenhausen to come back with that verbiage. Then if we decide that we want to lift that on the 28th, would we still have time? Mr. Bettenhausen?
Yes, I believe we have one more meeting before the 28th. Yeah, so I could come back with something. Do you have any input on, assuming the rest of the council's in agreement with this, on how long you would want to propose for a repayment period?
Well, I have a few questions before that.
Vice Mayor, yeah.
Yes. First of all, in the regulation from the state, was there a clause saying that you have to meet a certain amount of payment in order for you to continue with that? That clause probably inside in the regulation there. I don't know that we have that. I want to ask you if you know about it.
Yeah, we in our ordinance, we have a requirement that says that they need to prove that they have suffered loss and also that it was related to COVID. And they're supposed to provide evidence of that to the landlord. And then whatever they can't establish with the landlord, they need to pay. So if they owe $5,000 and they're able to show injury of $3,000, then they still need to pay $2,000 that month. They're supposed to under the ordinance.
Right.
So,
and at the time that we come up with this ordinance here, we were thinking of only 2 months, right? Because of the state order is for 2 months, executive order is for 2 months, and then they extended now until now it's 11 months. Okay,
correct.
and if we don't do anything with this one, we don't know if the state is going to extend it, the executive orders to several more months. Then this ordinance have to marry with the decision that the executive orders. Am I correct?
Yeah, as currently written, if the order gets extended again, which the order is basically, it gives cities the authority, it waives the normal requirements and gives cities the authority to establish these eviction protections. The governor back in September passed an order that said it would be extended till March 31st and then it would terminate. But my guess is there's a good chance that may get extended, and we don't know. We don't have to be tied to the governor's order. But at this point, no matter what, if he doesn't extend it, we're going to lose the ability to extend these as of March 31st. If he does nothing, we don't have the authority to extend it beyond that. My guess is he will. So it's in your, what I would do, I would suggest to no matter what you do, don't extend it past March 31st at this point. It could be shorter than that, but anything longer than that, we would revisit the issue probably later at the end of March if there's any desire to want to extend it further. Because we have to see if we even have the authority to do that.
Well, at the request of Vice Mayor Charlie Nguyen, that it is to end, to be lifted February 28th. And like I said, I'm fine with that. I just think that we need to take care of the ones that we need to put in a clause, just, to specify what's going to happen to the ones that owe. So we can't just simply change that expiration date and that's it. There are unintended consequences, like I said earlier. Okay, I spelled out very clearly, and that's going to happen. So that's why I want to. Number one is it's really when we extended from March until last year. I'm talking March of 2020 to. I think that he extended to what? It was like first it was going to be March to April for a couple months. So when we initially approved that, it stated that no later than 4 months, assuming that those people only owe 2 months, correct?
Correct. It was only a couple of months initially.
Yeah, it was only going to be a couple months, so they have 4 months to pay up, a couple months to catch up. So meaning they'll be paying their rent, their monthly rent, plus half of the month to catch up at every month. And then after 4 months, they would be caught up with their 2 months back rent. But when we extended, we neglected to go back and say, you know, hey, now we got to put no later than 6 months or no later than 8 months. So I need to know all those extensions. I think we need to go back and look at all those extensions and see what exactly, how many times did we extend? But that's, I think it's just an oversight on our part. When we extend it, we just figure, okay, we're extending the expiration of that ordinance, but we didn't know that in that ordinance, there's also that says no later than 4 months. We got to bump it to no later than, 6 months or 8 months or whatever. And then that money would, otherwise it's going to be too high for them. It's not reasonable. I am going to see vacancies. We are going to see vacancies. That's going to be a problem. So, I'm not asking for it to be extended beyond March or anything like that. We could, have this ordinance expire February 28th, no problem. But we got to look after those tenants who actually, like I said, the ones that have back pay have supposedly proven that they've been affected by COVID-19. Otherwise, they shouldn't qualify. So assuming that they owe because of, they've got back pay or they owe back pay because of COVID-19, then how are they going to pay? How are they going to pay up in 4 months? 11 months worth of back pay. That's what I'm saying to you. So, Mr. Bettenhausen, do you understand my point?
I do. I do.
I have a question. I'm assuming that most tenants were paying something during this whole time. They weren't paying nothing. I mean, they have to have paid a certain percentage of their rent, correct?
Or
So
even nothing. I mean, if they qualify to pay nothing, then they pay nothing. Right.
But for the most part, they've been paying something. I mean, I agree with you. If we are going to shorten the eviction moratorium, the compromise would be to extend the back pay time limit. I mean, that's a good compromise. Allow them more time to repay if that's the council's decision to shorten the eviction. That makes a lot of sense.
And even if we don't shorten the eviction, I just think this is an oversight on our part, our city part, that we did not change that no later, quote unquote, no later than 4 months. It should have been, we should have added on to no later than 6 months, no later than 8 months when we extended. So I'm just saying to you that this is an oversight. So if we leave this up to tenants and to landlords, I can tell you that a lot will be evicted. And I do not want to see that. We're really trying to help our tenants. And there's no way that I do not want to see vacancies. I do not want to, these tenants booted out of their stores, their place of business, and within 3 days. So I propose that we go back. We let Mr. Bettenhausen come back with some verbiage that's, give you more time to think about what you could come up with that makes it fair. But definitely, if you want to lift this on the 28th of February, we could still do that.
Don't we need to have direct our city attorney as far as the time? I mean, it is not up to him to come up with the time.
That would be helpful.
So because I can't come up with the time simply because I don't know how many times it's been renewed. Does that make sense to you? Unless you can tell me now. How many times did you renew that?
I believe, we had the original order, and then that was only a couple months, and then it got extended to the end of September. So that was the first extension from my recollection. And then in September, they extended it until now. So we've had 2 extensions beyond the original order. So we've had 3 different timeframes we've dealt with so far.
So, but I think this is easy, is that the first one is only 2 months, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
Okay, so the first one is 2 months and then they get 4 months to pay their back pay. So that is what you're gonna go with, is basically if they owe 10 months, then they get 20 months to pay. Because now we gotta let them catch up. Otherwise they're gonna get out, they're gonna be booted out. So to catch up, they get to pay half of their month back pay each month to catch up. That's what it looks like. The formula looks like that. So right now the formula doesn't, it looks like it's just 4 months, no matter how many months you owe. So that to me is an oversight. So if we could go, and if you tell me that you don't need to come back, we don't need to come back and do that. I'm just saying that you can go and verify how many times, how many months, and if so we don't have to go by your recollection of this event, then you can do the math and calculate it out and then come back. Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have the problem of, yes. Can you hear me? I don't have a problem of extending the payment, but I would like to keep the date as February 28th to lift up this ordinance. So how are we going to lift up this ordinance with the time extension for repayment? I don't have any problem with.
But Mr. Bettenhausen said that we still have one more meeting and we still could make that the 28th. We could still make it that deadline, correct? Mr. Christian?
Yes, we have one more meeting this month. It would be before the 28th.
Then I'm fine with that, no problem.
So what formula do you think we should come up with? I mean, we need to give Christian some help on this one.
I just did. So
if you owe
Yeah.
6 months, then you get 6 months.
No, it's not that. It's just that
It's about a repayment,
you have to look at how many times, because that's the unknown. And if you go by your recollection of it, then I'm afraid we might be wrong. So let's say we've extended it all the way, so only 2 months, and now it's like 10 months. So by February 28th, that will be 11 months, correct? Right?
Yes.
11 months, so then you would write in there 22 months.
I would think that, we don't have to base on the 2 month period that we said, 2 months for 2 months, then we have to have 4 months. Now we can change it to make it, of course, I'm not saying that we have to make it just like 3 months and 4 months, but we don't have to go by 2 months and 4 months. And so now it's 4 months, then have to be 8 months and so on and so on. So we have to come up with the time frame which can help the landlord, and at the same time it can also accommodate the help lessen the burden from the tenants. So we have to compromise on the repayment plan.
Okay, according to my math, that would be, if we keep it at the same standard, no later than 4 months, then it's now 11 months later. Then that means that you would, so if they were, so that would be 22 months. And if you have another formula, then you could propose, but I'm not changing from whatever we approved before. So we extended for 2 months, and then we gave them 4 months of back pay. So it's really 1 to 2. So that means that if they are, so now we're 11 months into it, then we got to give them 22 months to pay. Okay. And if they want to pay earlier than that, that's fine, but I do not want to just leave it up to the landlord. It's just not fair. It wouldn't be right.
My concern is that, we should not be in the business of rent control. I mean, it's been the pandemic was like, we have to be able to, it's been like almost a year since the pandemic, since the shutdown. And those businesses already bankrupt, shut down. They're already shut down. Those who are still around, they're pretty much doing okay or barely survive. So for us as a city, and starting regulating landlord and have a formula for them to comply, I don't think it's fair for the landlord. I mean, you know, tenants is a top academy. I mean, it's so sad to see a lot of businesses shutting down because of the pandemic. You know, the many business in the city that's been it's been around for decades and have to close down because they're unable to operate on the to-go basic. But at the same time, you know, we have to take a consideration for the landlords. You know, they need to pay the mortgage, the payment. So for us, I think our best follow the state guideline instead of venturing into a form of rent control by making the tenant to come up, I mean, the landlord and tenant to come up with formulas. I think it's too complicated. We just leave the laws up to the state. We can't override the state. We can let it run out in March and do nothing.
You know what? I'm not sure if you misunderstood, but I want to clarify again is that we originally went with what the state stated. We went with their ordinance. So basically we adopted that and back in March. So, but we put in there that they are to pay no later than 4 months. So that is what we have. This is not rent control. This is not rent control. I'm not controlling any rent. I'm just saying that to be fair, we gave them 4 months if they were to owe 2 months. So now that part has not moved, but now we've extended to 11 months, but we neglected to change that clause. So I'm just saying that I'm just catching our mistake previously. And all I'm saying is that if we don't change this, and then we're lifting the moratorium for commercials, we are going to see a lot of tenants hurt because they are trying, you know, so the ones that are remaining, the ones that are still, their doors are still open, you would assume that those are the ones been hurt by COVID. Okay. And because landlords kept them in there, and I'm sure they have, you know, they have the right to ask, as the moratorium, as you read, our ordinance stated that they have to show proof that they've been hurt by COVID. So if they've been hurt by COVID, okay, we are going by the state. We are going exactly. But I don't know, ours, the one that what we adopted stated no later than they are to pay their back pay no later than 4 months. That's the part that I have a problem with. So this is not rent control or anything, Councilman. So, Mr. Bettenhausen.
Okay, so
Yep.
we've been talking about this for, I don't know, an hours. What do we need to do to get this moving forward?
Well, I just want to mention the point that you talked earlier. You said earlier that just let it run out on March 31st, and we're okay with that. We are not okay with that. We don't lift this ordinance. It will continue to run. If let's say that by March 31st, and the governor executive order extended for another 6 months, then this will apply again. This will continue if we don't lift this one up. And so, you know, we have to do, just like our city attorney said, that we need to, you know, if we do it after March, we don't want to continue to do this. Because initially, we come up with this ordinance here is for 2 months. And when they extended it, we just ignored it. We just didn't go back and revisit. Now, the concern that the council member Ho said that if we lift this one up, that then we will have to go with this ordinance that 4 months. I do understand that, but if we use that measure to come up with a formula for the tenant to pay within that time frame, I think it's hurt a lot for the landlord. I agree with Councilmember Doe. I mean, right now, I can see that there are grants for small business here and there. People apply and people get get the money, but I don't. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see any grant that to offer the landlord for the for the mortgage, or any state or federal grants for the landlord. And if we continue to let this one run, I am sure that if the landlord can't continue to keep their business, I mean their building or commercial building, then we can't help the business here. So we have to look both ways. We can't look at one way and then ignore the other.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Okay, so let's say that okay, we end this now, all right, and then governor issue a new order. Can this city ordinance stand? No, right?
Yes. Yes.
City attorney.
We ended when?
Right now, the governor has issued authority to cities to issue these kinds of protections up through March 31st. So our authority does not currently extend beyond that.
Okay, I understand, but if we stop the city ordinance, okay, and then the governor issue a new order, extend the rent protection to the tenant for another 6 months. Can we, as a city, override the state decision?
No.
Okay.
Some cities did not tie. They gave rent protections, but and I was just researching this. The original order by the governor ended on May 31st. So it went from
March.
The governor issued the executive order. On March 16th. So April, May, June. Well, so up through May 31st. So it was from that period, March 16th to May 31st. Then it went to September 30th. And we tied, it was not an eviction. He was not granting any kind of eviction protections in that order. All he said is, by my emergency powers, I'm going to suspend any state laws that would prohibit cities from doing this, from enacting protections. So he continues to grant this authority to cities to give eviction protections. That's what he keeps extending. It's not eviction protections itself. We're doing that under the authority that he's granting. So if he extends it again, he's merely extending your option to grant eviction protections. It's in your discretion to do it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that, and you made yourself really clear earlier that it is it is our option, our prerogative to extend or not. So it's not like it's going to automatically renew beyond March if he renews beyond March, correct? So as you
correct,
said,
and to answer Councilmember Doe's question, it doesn't put us in any kind of conflict with the governor. If he extends it, we've already said, well, we're not extending it, and that we're fine.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, did we stick in that clause about no later than 4 months? Was that our doing? We made that?
Yes, I think that was originally to, provide some means of not demanding payment right away, recognizing that we were, at the time in March, it was a very urgent concern, and people, couldn't eat, in restaurants, and there was just a concern that it would not be able to suddenly pay the entire amount back. So a reasonable period of 4 months seemed appropriate at the time.
Yeah. So that's what we put on. And so right now, what I'm asking is that we put on there, up to 22 months. So I think that's what I am proposing. And, you know, I'm okay with lifting it the 28th of February, the way Vice Mayor Chi Charlie proposed, but adding on that no later than, so payments are to be paid no later than 22 months. Just because we had that clause before. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I didn't invent that. That was on there. That was stuck on there. And, you know, now if we're going to end it, then we should make it right. Okay.
All right, I see a compromise. I see a compromise between Councilmember Ho and then the Vice Mayor. So the Vice Mayor, are you okay with Councilmember Ho?
Like I said like I said earlier, I think that we you know, because of the 4-month period that we put on, okay, we can we probably over that. We can go ahead and make the change. I just don't agree that we need to use that formula to come up with all these extension months. So I like to ask if the city city attorney to come out with you know, for the next meeting, one with recommendation from council member Ho, and another one that is reasonable, that can help the landlord, that, you know, it's reasonable for landlord and also the tenants, which is, we don't have to base on that formula, because 22 months out, I think it's a lot longer than they expected.
So,
So
then
okay?
I need to see the motion to continue this item for the next meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to make that motion to continue this item to the next meeting and see if we can add on or add on the clause that is, how should I word that, Mr. Bettenhausen? Relating to.
Well, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then I would prepare 2 versions of the ordinance, one providing for 22 months repayment period, and also trying to maybe include some language that would require the landlord and tenant to try and work out an agreement, but also to come with a second version of the ordinance as proposed by Vice Mayor Nguyen, that might have a shorter period, probably with similar terms though. Again, trying to get the landlord and tenant to reach a mutual agreement, but if they can't, giving the tenant some period of time to repay. That's more than 4 months.
For the one that is for 22 months, if you can please add that tenants and landlord are to basically come to an agreement. And then up to 22 months. We're not going to say we give them 22 months, but if they, you know, at least it protects the tenants who really want to make it. To tell you the truth, the ones that don't want to continue, they'll get out, you know, in 3 days. But the ones that already come to you know, come to an agreement and sign such an agreement, then, you know, to make it reasonable, then to have it up to 22 months, not more than 22 months. And that's all we could do, because according to what we gave them before, for 2 months, we give them 4 months to pay back. So now for 11 months, we give them 22 months to pay back. That to me is what I see as reasonable. That's humanity. Okay.
Is there a motion out there? Is there any
Well, I like to make a motion as.
I thought I already did.
So sorry.
Okay.
So right now there is a motion made by Councilmember Ho to continue the item. Which the city attorney will come back with 2 versions. So I need a second if that's going to move forward.
Vice Mayor Nguyen, are you okay with that motion?
That's what I try to understand. Is that the motion that the council member Ho wants
to continue?
The council member Ho make a motion to continue this item for the next meeting, and the city attorney will bring this item back with two versions of the formula. Am I right? Am I
With
correct?
two versions. What I'm trying to understand is, I don't think that she want to have two versions, but she have one version with 22 months, and then with the language, along with language, and I like to have the suggestion, the recommendation from the city attorney. Yes, we can go ahead with the two proposal. If that's what you propose, if that's what your motion is, then I will second it.
Councilmember Ho, are you okay with two version? I think you did, right?
That's fine. Yeah, like I said,
Okay.
as long as you remember what I said about my version, the one with 22 months, just go ahead and include, because up to 22, not fixed 22, and then landlord to, and landlord tenants to come to agreement. So, if they agree on whatever it is, but like I said, up to 22 months is what
Councilmember Do?
our tenants.
Is there a second to that? I just
I would
want
like
to
to make a motion and just end this temporary moratorium on the date of February 8th, and let the landlord and tenant work it out on their own term. We should not regulate this. I mean, it's been a year. Those who have survived, the landlord will help them. They don't, landlord, they want tenant who capable of taking care of business, making money and pay rent. And we're not in the business of regulating this. Let the tenant and landlord deal with it. If we want to end this, we end this now. Okay, that's I'd like to make a substitute.
A quick question. I know there's ads out there for both tenants and property owners, isn't there?
Sorry,
Hold on a second.
City Council,
Clerk,
sorry, I'm sorry. I'm trying to catch up on the motion part. I still have that original motion on the floor. I need to confirm that there's a second. If there's not a second, that motion is going to die, and council member can then make his motion for someone else to.
Is there any way that
Vice
our
Chair
city
already
clerk
did.
to repeat the original motion so all the members of the community they understand? Can you repeat the original motion one more time? And is there a second of that motion, please?
Okay, it is.
Okay.
My motion is for us to have our city attorney come back with two versions. Okay, the version that has the 11 months is one that's going to include tenants and landlord to come to the table and come to an agreement. And then the other is up to 11 months to pay back. And this is because we originally, back in March, okay, made an ordinance that stated that we gave them for 2 months of back pay, we gave them no later than 4 months to pay back. So we are not trying to regulate anything. We're just trying to make sure we're consistent with what we did back in March. Okay, now 11 months later, that's all. So like I said, that's my motion.
And let me clarify, you said 11 months, and I think you mean 22 months to repay, correct?
Correct.
Yes, okay.
So
we come back with two ordinances, one, the way you're phrasing it, and a second ordinance then that would be as Vice Mayor Nguyen has proposed. You're okay with that in your motion?
Yes.
I meant, Councilmember Ho, are you okay with coming back with a second version in your
Yes.
motion?
Yeah.
Okay, you are. And so is that seconded?
I'd like to choose.
But before we do that, I want to make sure we have a second. Do we have a second to that motion?
Vice Mayor.
I second it.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a second. Thank you.
Okay, so now, Councilmember Doe, you had a substitute motion you wanted to make.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to approve the city ordinance on the agenda tonight. That's what Vice Mayor Charlie Nguyen put on the agenda, to end this temporary moratorium and let the tenant and landlord work it out on their own term. So we don't have to waste our time and come back next meeting and go over the same. This is what you want. This is what the the landlord opportunity to filter out the people who cannot sustain their business anymore and let them work it out. Just approve on the agenda tonight.
Well, why did we pass one to begin with back in March if we didn't, so since we passed one back in March, it says to allow them to be 2 months later, 2 months late back pay and allow them 4 months. So now I'm just trying to be consistent with what we agreed on or we voted on back in March. So
what we're doing is we allow
I'm sorry, do we have a second for this?
Yeah.
No, we
Okay,
need to vote on our first.
I got it, Christine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I think
there
it's
is a
important.
substitute motion on the floor.
Correct. Is there a second to the substitute motion to approve
Wait,
the
I
ordinance?
I thought we are to vote on the first.
No,
What?
but we have a substitute motion. So substitute motion go
motion.
I
first.
thought you have to wait until it fails and then you have a substitute motion.
No,
No.
we have a substitute motion. So
Oh.
is there
Now,
a
Didn't know that.
Can I have
second for
comment?
substitute motion?
Can I have comment on what the substitute motion that Councilman Doe just said? I like the idea and I want to proceed with that. Now I have a question for city attorney. What we put out before at a 4 months period, and now we come back and lift this moratorium, and then we said that it will be the deal between the landlord and tenants. Is that okay or not?
Yes, I'm sorry. Is what okay? Yes, you can approve.
Do we have to take into consideration that in our previous ordinance we said that 4 months. Okay, now we lift this ordinance and we said that it's up to the landlord and the tenant to work out the plan. Is that okay?
Yeah, all this ordinance does is change the date to cause it to terminate on after the 28th. So it would leave in place what was in the original ordinance.
That means no later than 4 months.
Right. Yeah, that language would still be in the
Right.
document. It doesn't mean that they couldn't pay it sooner, but it would give them up to 4 months to repay.
Okay.
So is there a second to the substitute motion? We haven't decided that yet.
You can't be pro-business if you're not going to, you're not supporting our business community. Yeah, I don't know who you're supporting, but okay, just to make it clear that you're not supporting our business community. Okay?
I think that's
All right.
that's a landlord.
Well, then you should have not voted for that back in March. That's what you voted for in March.
All right, so I don't see that we have a second for the substitute motion, so the substitute motion dies.
I still want to discuss about it. I want to make sure that if we lift this one up, and if I go with the substitute motion that Councilmember Doe just put out, will that I just want to miss from the legality standpoint. I don't want them to come back and say, okay, because you have made decision for 4 months, and now I have to live with the 4 months period. If we lift this one up, and then we said that you let the tenant and the landlord work it out, do we still buy with the 4 months period that we set out earlier? That means if we lift this one up and we say yes, according to the motion that the Councilman Doe, do they have to pay back in the 4 months period?
City Attorney? City Attorney, can you unmute?
Muted.
Yeah. The ordinance was enacted under the governor's authority. So the moment that authority is gone, we no longer have authority. Our ordinance as originally drafted said you must give them at least 4 months to repay. The landlord might agree to longer. It's really in the landlord's hands. This is not something where we go in and we're going to file any litigation. We're not going to enforce anything. This is going to be between the landlord and the tenant. And what we're saying is, landlords, legally, you cannot go evict them until this date, whatever date we set, and in accordance with these terms. So all we're saying by doing this is that that eviction ban will no longer be in place. And in accordance with our ordinance, it will say they have up to 4 months to repay.
There you go.
How that ends up working out between the landlord and the tenant and the courts will be involved there. If a tenant doesn't want to pay, they're going to go in there and say, the city had an ordinance that said that I had 4 months. I don't know how that's going to play out on an individual basis. We are not going to go to court and be arguing anything. So that's my response.
May I have a question for our city attorney?
I'm sorry.
So may I have a question for our city attorney? Make sure that I understand completely. So basically, with the motion and from Councilmember Ho and the second, that motion from the vice mayor. So the city will not regulate anything between the tenant and the landlord. Am I correct? So we don't have any authority to step in. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
I want to clarify that. I believe that, Mr. Mayor, if we, with the motion that member O and I second it, with that allowed the city attorney to go back and put out, another resolution or ordinance or whatever that is, but with the set date that the landlord cannot evict the tenant. What Council Member Doe proposed is that, just let the tenant and the landlord go ahead and solve their problem. So,
City attorney, is that a difference between the motion made by Councilmember Ho and the motion made by Councilmember Doe? Is that the main difference?
Yes, the main difference is that she's asking that we come back with a modification to allow longer for the tenant to repay, to put language into the ordinance that says that the tenant has longer to repay, and also encouraging the landlord and the tenant to try and work out a mutually agreeable agreement first. But if they can't, then at minimum, the tenant will get 22 months to repay. So that's different. That's trying to add some language that would extend the time.
To pay, not.
You know what? Let me just say this, and I want to remind everybody, I'm a landlord. Okay, I'm just telling you that not every landlord is nice, like as I am, and I just think that this is going to prevent nasty landlords from kicking out and being unreasonable. Okay, so because I do care about the business community, is what I'm trying to do is to make sure I understand, and I think I stated very clearly that I encourage the landlord and tenants to go and draft up some of their own agreements and all that. But I think the part that I said I want to protect was to give them up to 22 months, up to. And that's because of our clause earlier back in March that we said we're going to give them, 2 months back pay, they get 4 months. So I'm just being consistent with that clause, and with our ordinance we agreed to back then, that we neglected to, shall I say, revise as we renewed. So it wasn't like I came up with it. I'm just saying that now that we're lifting it, we need to look at the one, all those that we allowed to, all this time we allowed them to owe, back pay. What are we going to do with those people? If we don't put that clause in, we won't be able to protect them. You've got nasty landlords
that are just ready to boot them out, and I just want to prevent that from happening. Okay, so that's all I'm saying. If we never agreed on, that was our prerogative back in March to not agree to go with the state's eviction moratorium for commercials, but we did go with them, and then we added on that clause. Okay, pay no longer than 4 months, thinking that they're only going to have 2 months back pay. Okay, so I think I made myself really clear, and this is to protect our business community and to have some humanity at this COVID time. Is that too much to ask?
Can I interject, since I haven't been, so we already have a motion and a second on the floor, and we had that for a while, so I think we need to just vote on those two items on that, since we have.
Yeah, I understand we have a motion and a second on the floor, but I think this item really important, and I want to give all the council member an opportunity to ask all the questions and concerns. So
I actually want to do something now. Like let's vote on it now. I agree with
Vice Mayor, you want to say something, and then Council Member Dong?
We can't vote when we still have the standing on the floor.
You know,
I mean,
you don't want my substitute motion to let it die and move on. I mean, we cannot beat the horse any more. I mean, the survival of the Fed has been a year, with all the protection that all the business already have, and grant and support, and if they cannot make it, it's unfortunate. It's painful for me to even contemplate this, but we forgot that they're tenant. They're business people. They need to be able to collect their rent. I don't know if any tenant want to kick people out because they don't like them. So if this is what you want, put it on the agenda. Majority of the council people supported it. And you have a second says, you change your mind and just let it die, and then move on and vote to the first motion. I'm cool with that. It's not a problem. It's getting too long. I mean, we're going around and around. At the end, it's just like a form of rent control.
I have another question for the city attorney. Let's say if we lift this one up and we set a certain date that they're obligated to pay back the rent, assuming that the next month, or they have to fulfill the payment, right? The full payment. The time that we set is only for repayment, the money that they owe, correct?
Yes.
Yes, man.
Yeah, that would be it.
We're talking about.
Well, let me say this to you clearly, is that if they don't sign, that means that they're out. So if they're signing, meaning they're coming to an agreement that they're going to repay, and we're trying to establish a reasonable repayment plan, and not really a plan, but we're giving them just the same amount of time. To 2 months, you get 4 months, and now 11 months, you get 22 months, up to. If they want to pay it, the two agree that it's going to be earlier than that, fine. But let me tell you, if a tenant feel that they don't make it, then they just don't even sign. They'll just exit. They'll give back the space, and they're done. But the ones that want to stay, and you go, okay, 4 months, and I can't pay. I owe $50,000, and I can't pay it in 4 months. Then what are you going to do? You see, that's unreasonable. That's why I'm saying to just extend it just the way. 2 to 1, 1 to 2 ratio. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
If you disagree with that, you go ahead and vote your way, okay? But let it be clear that you're not supporting the business community. I just don't want to hear that you support this business community.
All right, so I want to call for a question. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Vice Mayor, are you okay with that? You the one who was second, Councilman Ho, motion.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
And before we vote, so I clarify, I'm going to come back with two versions of the ordinance, as we've
Okay.
stated a couple different times. I'm going to have one that's going to include up to the 22 months and trying to get the landlord and tenant to work out an agreement. And if that doesn't work, up to 22 months, and then an alternative that might be for a shorter period. And let me just add, I need to do a little research into how far we could extend it, because I don't want to go further than legally puts the city into a difficult position. So I'll take that into account in what I draft and bring back.
All right.
So that's the motion.
Thank you.
Can I clarify, Christian? The second alternative, that's completely different from what we have on the agenda today. Is that correct?
Yes, it's actually probably not going to be too much different than the first option. It's probably just going to be shorter.
Okay, but it's totally different from what we have on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, all that's on the agenda tonight was to change our existing ordinance and set a termination date of February 28th. That was the only change.
Okay,
so this would change it a little bit more, just to maybe clarify the repayment period.
So we try to regulate how long the tenant have to pay the landlord. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the main issue.
Okay, so the first version is what, 4 months?
The one that's presented to you tonight, 4 months.
Okay,
the two versions that I'll bring back to you, one will be 22 months as a maximum, and the other one will be something shorter than that.
Okay.
All right.
So Christian, the second version, which is not the 22 months, the second version, what's going to be the time frame, the time limit on the second version?
What I heard was he wanted me to look into it and come up with what is a reasonable time frame. So I'll come up with one. That would be one that on the night of, we can have a discussion about it and even modify that number if you want to change it then. But I don't know at this point what that would be, but something less than 22, but more than 4.
Okay.
All right, I call for the vote.
All right. So the original motion made by Councilmember Ho, seconded by Vice Mayor Nguyen, to continue to the next meeting. Councilmember Doe?
I voted no because I don't want to regulate how landlord and tenant paying each other. No.
Okay. Councilmember?
Which one?
Forgot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Loudest.
There you go.
So
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Ho, yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Manzo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Yes.
And Mayor Ta?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 4-1 with Councilman Doe voting no.
Next item, we have comment and request for agenda item from City Council agency member, including AB 1234 report when required. Before I invite Vice Mayor Nguyen speak, I believe that this is the last meeting for Sherry Johnson as interim city manager. So I want to thank her for her dedication, for her leadership to help our city for the last 12 months. I really appreciate that. When she became interim city manager, our city, we had to deal with pandemic, and Ms. Johnson, she worked really hard with department head, with outside agency, with many other level of government, different group from the community to help our city to overcome a lot of challenges. So I want to thank her. I want to extend my appreciation to everything she done for the community. So, Vice Mayor.
Yes, I second that. We totally appreciate for what she put in. I know it's been a year of a lot of headache for her, but she were there and get get the city running. I appreciate for her update to the council member every day. Those updates that she sent out really help us in terms of understanding where we are, what we the situation that the city is in at the present time. So I appreciate for that, and wish her with whatever the next adventure that she's moving on. I don't have anything to put on the agenda today, so I'm done with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Next, we have Council Member No.
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, I just want to thank you, Sherry Johnson, for your hard work. I mean, being an interim city manager during the pandemic is no joke, and you fulfill your duty beautifully. I hope that you become a city manager somewhere in the future. Thank you for all your greatly appreciate it, and we want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Giuseppe for becoming our next city manager. Looking forward to work with you. Congratulate Christian for becoming our city attorney. Looking forward to work with you. And congratulations to Dick Jones for your retirement. Hope you can have more time to work on your golf swing, your putt. So that's all I have. Thanks to city staff for your hard work, helping the resident with vaccine and testing for COVID. I mean, it's a tough job. Thank for the city staff for helping register the elderly to get the vaccine. And I would like to get more information how to enroll into the mobile vaccine. So I'll get a hold with Dan later. Thank you very much, and take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy New Year, Lunar New Year. This is not the regular New Year that we have in our city. No parade, no two parades, no festival, none of that stuff. But hey, you know what? We have to work with what we have, right? So, thank you very much, and take care. Good night.
Councilmember Ho, are you ready?
Thank you very much. I just want to, first of all, would like to thank our interim city manager, Sherry Johnson. Thank you so much for I don't want to start.
Take your time.
For having that, for the bravery, for your bravery, for stepping up and filling the role of city manager the last year. You're very brave, and you held the fort down very well, and I'm sure everybody agrees with that. I really appreciate the time that we spent together discussing the many issues relating to our city. And I got to know you over those discussions, and found out what a great person you are, and that we were very lucky to have you as our finance director all these years. And I know it was a behind the scenes type of job, so we really didn't get to know you as a finance director. But once you became our city manager, that's when I really got to know you, and I appreciate your the chance, the opportunity to work with you. And I wish you a lot of fun with your grandchildren as you're stepping into retirement. And I wish you a lot of luck, and please come back. And and I know you'll be around because you live in the city. So thank you again. Thank you for stepping into the job. Okay, so for my agenda, I would like to see if I could agendize, number one, is if we could, I could ask, well, number one is the no cash ordinance, no cash only ordinance, to see if we could look into that, city attorney could look into that and see if we need to start, I think that our city is a tourist city. And so I wanted to see if there's anything that we, want to agendize. I don't want to discuss right now, but I will, I don't know if I'm clear about my agenda, but basically I want to see if we could have an ordinance that discuss about the different types of payments other than cash only, and make that an ordinance. And so that's my agenda for next time.
All right, I honor council member Ho request.
Okay, so that is a request to add an item on the agenda for a no cash only ordinance, or regarding a no cash only ordinance, made by Councilmember Ho, seconded by Mayor Ta. Okay, roll call vote. Councilmember Doe?
Yes.
Councilmember Ho?
Yes.
Councilmember Manzo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Yes.
And Mayor Ta.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Councilmember Ho, anything else?
Yes, my next agenda, I don't know if we're all aware that AB 339 is passed, and basically this bill, it talks about, just briefly, is that it requires us to have translators for anybody, any groups that make up at least 5% of our population. And so I would like to see if we could agendize basically an agenda regarding translators, to see if who we have right now, and if we could get an update, the different translators, different groups, different shall I say, different languages at this time. And then of course we want to see what are the groups that we have at least 5% that makes up our population. So that's my agenda. That's it.
All right, so I honor that request. So Councilmember Ho want to discuss that whatever AB, right, for the next meeting?
Yes. So add that onto the agenda. Okay, roll call vote, Councilman Doe?
Yes, so quick questions. Didn't I have one of those regarding trend?
Yes,
Still work?
there have been several. So this is a new bill. The previous request that you had was regarding closed captioning or subtitling at the end. This particular bill is asking for translation, except it's more than just what we were focusing on, which was Vietnamese and Spanish. Yeah, this is more broad. There are multiple languages. Off the top of my head, I believe Korean and Chinese would be part of that as well. So it's a new bill that's floating around, but we can definitely look into it, and it'll all tie together. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Council Member Ho?
Yes.
Councilman Manzo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nguyen?
Yes.
And Mayor Ta?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be added to future agenda. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, so Councilmember Manzo.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Sherry Johnson for her many years of dedication to our city and stepping in a difficult role of interim city manager. I've seen her work, and I've heard a lot of good things about her, and something that she has that that can't be taught is her work ethic. Either you're born with it or you're not, and she definitely has it. And so I'm very really proud of her, and I really respect her as a dedicated city employee and as a person. Unfortunately, I didn't get to work with her as long as I probably would like to, but everything that I know of her, and she is very special person for sure. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all your hard work that you've given to our city in all these years. And I also want to thank Richard Jones for all his many years of service to our city. He's been a staple of our community for a long time, and I want to wish him well and his all his free time, and hope he gets to enjoy it. And also congratulations to Christian. I've got to work with him before our planning commission, and he's always very professional and very helpful, and I look forward to many years of working with you. And I want to congratulate you. And the same with congratulations to Marwan. He's very experienced in what he does, and I wish him well. I look forward to working with him and tackling the many issues that we have in our city. I also want to report that I attended a second version of the League of California Cities virtual summit a couple weeks ago. And for me, during my campaign, I listened closely to residents address issues that are very dear to me. They have similar themes as community pride, beautification, and revitalization. I'm very excited with the opportunities that we have before us to advance initiatives and build momentum towards city-wide efforts. I attended a bridge demolition event last week, and staff informed me that of the aesthetics enhancements that come with the OCTA funded project, staff has done a great deal of work to ensure that our corridors are improved, not just the freeway being widened, but our local streets as well. There is great opportunity to introduce public art as part of the project that will benefit our entire community. I have also seen other agencies within Southern California to implement public art along our corridors. There is a way to begin to define our districts within the city and create a sense of place. Defining and branding our districts was a recommendation of the 2016 general plan. This can get started with public art selected and installed by our talented residents at utility boxes, and also with painting of street poles and signals. I would like to spearhead a committee that will work with staff to implement strategies for community revitalization through art. I would also like to work with staff to explore opportunities to introduce community gardens in Westminster. Community gardens offer people and the community many benefits. They provide opportunities for both recreational gardening and food production in underutilized spaces. Together, and many community gardens. Finally, community gardens are great for our environment. Finally, community gardens bring people together and may reduce crime in our neighborhoods by increasing visibility, engaging citizens in positive initiatives. I've seen this succeed in other Orange County communities and would like to work with staff to explore this initiative. Also, I am excited that we will be re-engaging with our homeless task force. As the committee gets started on this very important matter that affects us all, I would like them to consider tiny houses as a bridge to permanent housing. Studies have shown that tiny house programs have been very successful in providing subsidized housing, permanent supportive housing, and private housing for families and individuals. While we continue to explore the traditional homeless shelter model, I would like our committee to consider tiny houses models as a solution for our community. So that being said, I would like to work with staff on those community gardens and implementing an art component in our city. I don't know if it's really an agenda item, but that's something that I would like to work with staff on going forward.
So yeah, so I want to thank Councilmember Menzel for your report. So basically that you want to start that initiative with by working with staff. That doesn't need to be an agenda item, right? Basically you just want to work with staff for that area. Am I right?
Yeah, I want to work with staff to establish a community gardens program in our city, and to also establish an art program that is tied to the OCTA funded project. With that project, we have to come up with some decorative panels and establish a committee to work with the staff for the art development in our community.
So I have a question for City Attorney with Councilmember Menzel. He just want to work with staff, for his initiative. Does that need to be approved for future agenda item, or doesn't have to be?
No, unless there's no objection, he can work with staff on that.
Okay, nice. All right, before
the other thing that may be an agenda item is I would like to staff to pursue grant funding for Spring Street projects. That's something that needs to be on an agenda item.
What? Agenda item?
Yeah,
Can you repeat that again, please?
To pursue a grant funding for Green Street projects. Is that something that no?
City Attorney, is that consider the agenda item? I can't be confused.
Well, I think the issue is the amount of staff time that might be involved in something, or if it's something you don't want to have pursued, or you do. So if it's something that there needs to be some discussion, like he knows of specific grant projects and you want to put that on the agenda as something to pursue or not, then put it on for discussion.
Well, let me work with staff and see if
okay,
if it's something that needs to be agendized. All right, thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Menzel?
No, that's it.
Thank you so much for that. Before I invite our interim city manager to speak, I really want to thank our city attorney, Mr. Jones. I've been working with him for many years. Really appreciate his guidance. I think he's been helping our city and all the members of the city council regarding the state law and the city ordinance. I believe he's still around. If any council member have any questions or concerns, I think that we're more than welcome to ask him, and he willing to give us an answer or an advice. So now, in the room, city manager, Ms. Sherry Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you for all your kind words. And it's it's been quite a year, and I'm so honored that I was able to work with you all and with the staff during this pandemic. And things are looking better with the vaccine, around the corner, and I'm hoping for good things for our city. Of course, I will be around as always. So I do want to congratulate Dick on his retirement as well, and thank him on behalf of staff. I know he's been around even longer than me, and he will be missed. And congratulations to Christian and to Marwan as well, and good luck to Marwan, and wish him the best, and all of you the best as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And one more time, I'd like to concur with all the council members. I'd like to extend my congratulations to Vision and Marwan. We've been working with them for a long time. They're doing really well. With that, I adjourn the meeting. Next regular meeting will be on Wednesday, February 24, 2021 at 7 p.m. Happy New Year and meeting adjourned.